3. Another very special Harcourts Rata and Co auction at number 41, Sarissa Street in LALOR. My name is Robert Ozzimo and I proudly represent the company of Harcourts Rata and Co. I'm joined here today by some of my award-winning team in blue, the best in the north. Should you require their advice, please feel free to approach either Jim, Leon and of course Tsalkos, who no doubt you've had the great pleasure of meeting throughout the marketing campaign. Boys, let me share with you the following announcements which you in place have you bid and buy with absolute confidence here today. The auction will be conducted in accordance with the rules and any additional conditions are made available for inspection before the start of the auction. The auction rules prohibit an auctioneer from accepting bids or offers for a property after the property has been knocked down to the successful bidder. The vendors have a reserve price as the auctioneer will indicate bidders on request. The law prohibits false bids, prohibits major disruptions by bidders and prohibits bidders attempting to prevent others from bidding and provides for fines for such conduct. The rules permit for vendor bids. The words I'll use during the auction to indicate that I'm making a bid on behalf of the vendor are vendor bid, and by law only I, as the auctioneer, can make a vendor bid. The contract of sale has been on display prior to today's auction. We call for 10% deposit upon the fall of the hammer and the signing of that contract to take place here today and the balance to be paid at settlement in 30 to 90 days time, at which time the vendor will provide the lucky buyer with vacant possession of the property. All in all, it's quite a straightforward document. Everything's in there, everything's quite clear. So buyers, is with my highest recommendation what we offer for consideration and competition here today. A great opportunity before you for any first home buyer, investor or family. Here in this great family location, you only need to look around to see how special a location it is. Recreation facilities across the road, parkland across the road, easy access to good quality schools, both primary, secondary and tertiary close at hand, and plenty of options when it comes to shopping and transport. So it really is a great location, and again, if you look up and down Sarissa, you'll notice some very house proud owners because it is quite a special place to live. The property itself, immaculately maintained, absolutely nothing to do. A free flowing floor plan incorporating 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms here in the corner of Mossman, and over 400 square metres of prime residential property. So whether you're a first home buyer, whether you're an investor, whether you're looking for the next place for you and your family, the opportunity to get the salt sticker on the board is before you now. If you'd like to reserve that right, now's the time to do just that, buyers. Where can I see a fair and reasonable starting bid for 41 Sarissa? Who'd like to start us off? At 740,000, fairly been offered now. Welcome, sir, and best of luck here today. At 740,000, fairly been offered, and the bid's there at 740. At 740,000. At 740,000, fairly been offered now at 740 the bid. At 740,000, the bid's there. The competition's there. The opportunity with you all. At 740,000, if you've come to buy, there's your competition. At 740 now. At 740,000 once. At 740 are we done. At 700. I'm hoping for 20 in the rise, sir. Can I say 60? At 740 the bid's there, 60. At 760, welcome and best of luck at 60. At 760,000, 80 the call. At 760 now. I'm taking 20, sir. Make it 80 in the rise. At 760 the bid's here. At 760,000, we'll circle back to you at 760 now. At 760,000, fairly been offered, and 20 the call now. At 760 the bid. At 760,000, got to be 20 in the rise. At 760 the bid. At 760,000, first call. At 80 there, Con. At 780 now, 780,000, perhaps round me off to 8 now. At 780,000, fairly been offered now at 780 the bid. At 780,000, 90, I'll shorten my stride and get you involved at 90 now. At 800,000, it's got to be now. At 790,000 the bid. At 790, fairly been offered here at 790. At 790,000 and 800,000. At 800,000, your 10 still good with me if you've got it at 800,000, even money here now. At 10 got. At 810, I've already got it here, Con, at 810,000. 20 if they like. At 810,000, I dare say they've got to be quick though. At 820,000 now at 820. 20 I've got here. I said they've got to be quick at 30 now. At 830,000. At 830 the bid. At 830,000, fairly been offered now. 40 if you like. At 830 got. At 840 now. At 840 and 50 now. At 850,000 got one in. At 850 now. At 8.5 in the bid's there across the road. At 850 fairly been offered now. At 850 the bid. At 850,000 60 got. At 860 the bid. At 860,000 fairly been offered at 860 the bid. We are on the market. We are selling. The bid's here. The keys are here at 65 and the keys here now at 865,000. We sell here today. I'm not going inside, not seeking instructions. There is no halftime break. So if you have come to buy, you must bid me now or forever hold your peace, because we're on the market. We sell 865. Bids here, keys are here. We sell away. once, at 70 now, at 870,000, at 870 in the bid. You had the keys for a moment there, sir. 875 now and got them back. At 875, at 8 3/4 now, at 875 the bid. At 875,000, fairly been off now at 875. At 875,000, bid here, keys here, we sell. At 875 the bid. At 875,000 now is the time. If you've come to buy, you must show me now. At 875,000, we're on the market, we sell. 875 the bid. At 876, welcome and best of luck at 76. Now, sir, the best response to a small bid is a big one at 880 now, and we're back on top at 880,000. Sir, if you're going to come in that late in the proceedings, come in with style, give me a big bid. At 885 now, at 885, at 885 now, at 885,000, fairly been offered now, 885 bids there across the road, so are the keys. At 885,000, 887 and a half. At 887.5 now, 887,500, 88 now at 88. 90 now at 890,000. At 890,000, bids there at 90. At 92.5. 95 if you like, or take me to 9. At 892.5. At 95. At 895 now. At 895,900 surely, sir. At 900, fairly bidden offered out 9. At 900, it's just a round number, don't let it scare you off. At 900, the bid might be his limit. At 900, at 901, at $901,000 now. At 901 the bid. At 901, at 905, at 905 got. At 2.5, at 903.5, at 902.5. I always try for the higher amount, 902.5. At 905 now, thank you for sorting that mess out, sir. At 905,000. At 905,000, bids now in the centre at 905. At 905,000, fairly been offered here at 905. At 905,000, fairly been offered 10, can I suggest? At 905 the bid. At 905,000, first call at 905, done. At 906. At 906,000, 906,007. At 907 now. At 907,000. How about 910, sir? At now 910 now. At 910,000. At 910,000. Bid back there. Opportunity with you at 910. At $910,000. Fairly been offered now. 11. At 911. At 911. That's an emergency, sir. You're about to miss out. 12. At 912. At 13. At 913 and 15. At 15 there, at 915,000. At 915, what was that bid about to be, sir? At 915,000 bid there, it's against you. At 16 now, at 916. At 916,000. At 916,000, bid back there, keys back there, opportunity still with you at 16. Are we done over here? Thank you for your bidding here today. At 916,000, fairly been offered there at 916. First call at 916, all done. Second call at 916, done and finished. Third, final call at $916,000 the bid, all done, all finished at 20 now, and a great bid at that at 920,000, sir. We done here? Thank you very much for your bidding here today at 921, at 921 the bid, at 921,000, fairly been offered now. How about 9 1/4? At 921 the bid, at 921,022 now, at 922, at 922,000. Can I say 25, sir? At 922,000, bid there, take me to 25. At another one at 925, at 925. At 925,000, fairly been offered now at 925, bid there, keys there, opportunity with you at 925. At 925,000, out here. Sir, do I have your best here today? Definitely done. Thank you very much for your bidding here today. At 26 now, at 926, down to 2. At 926,027. At $927,000 now. At 927, how about 30? At 927,000, fairly been offered now at 927 the bid. Once at 927,000, all done. Second call at 927, done.
Take 500.
I will at 927.5. At 927.5, this is the time to really put the boot down, sir. Say 930. At 500, 928. At 928,000. At 928,000, bid there, keys there. We're on the market. We sell at 928 the bid. At 928,000, fairly been offered now 928. You almost had it, sir. He's got the keys though now. At 928,000, if you want them back, got to bid me now. At $928,000 the bid. Once at 928, all done. Twice at 928.30 got. At 930,000. At 930 the bid now. At 930,000, fairly been offered back there at 30. At 30.5. At 930, 500. At 930,500 the bid. When the competition goes half, sir, it's time for a big bid, a knockout bid at 930,531. At 931 the bid. At $931,000 a bid. Small bids aren't working, sir. Try a big one. At 931 and the bid's there. At 931 the bid. Fairly been offered now at 931 and a half. Now at 931 and a half. At 931,500. Fairly been offered at 32. At 932. At $932,000 a bid. Bid there. Keys there. We sell. At 932. Definitely out there. We're out there. Definitely out over there, Jim, at 932,000. One at 33. At 933. At 933 the bid. At 933,000. And we're back here at 33. At 933,000. Got to dig deep now if you want to buy. Be decisive if you want to buy at 33 and a half. At 933 and a half. Can I say 35, sir? At 935. At $935,000 the bid. At 935 the bid. At 935,000 bids there. Keys there. If you tell me you're out, they'll keep them. At 935. At 935,000, fairly been offered 35 and a half at 35 and a half. At 935,500. At 935,500, bid there now. Keys there now. At 935 and a half. And 36 now. At 936. At 936 the bid now. 936,000. Perhaps take me to 40. At 936 and 40 got. At 940 the bid. At 940,000. It's just a big bid, so you can make one too at 940. At 940,000 the bid's there. The keys are there. If you tell me you're out, they'll keep the keys. At 940,000. At 940 the bid. At 940,000, fairly been offered now. Once at 940, are we done? At 940,000 twice. At 940, done. Finished. Third. Final call at $940,000 a bid. All done, finished, silent out. We're definitely done here. Definitely done. Thank you. At 940, we're definitely done, sir. Thank you once more. At 940,000, bid there, keys there. They're walking away. We're done there. At 940, fairly been offered. First call, second call, third and final call at 940. All done, all finished, all silent out. At 940,000, we are selling, selling, selling. Sold. Congratulations and well bid. Please join me in congratulating our purchasers and our vendors here today. You've just witnessed another successful Harcourts, Rata & Co auction. Have a great weekend and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
How much you sell it?
940, sir.
Huh?
940.
940.
940. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Congratulations. Well bid. Well done.